make it clear.
Order. I did not make the comment.
Well, it's not about taking away rights. It is about giving opportunity.
Good ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with a panel of bloggers and opinion shapers. Joining me tonight, he searches the cosmos to explain global warming, the next Minister of Science and Innovation, leader of the Conservative Party, Colin Craig. And he suddenly gained a Liberal fan base for walking out on Willie and JT's Radio Live show. Moral shepherd of the right and feminist hero, NBR political columnist Matthew Hooton. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, Issue 1. What does a National Conservative Government 2014 look like? Issue 2. Can any male broadcaster on Radio Live talk about rape without offending victims? And Issue 3 tonight, was Russell Norman being insensitive to the Philippines by mentioning global warming? Plus, we'll end the show on a final word. But let's kick things off tonight with Issue 1. All week, John Key has been dropping huge hints that he will have a hot Milo with Colin Craig in the new Auckland electorate to help generate a possible coalition partner for No Mates National. Colin, you were asked about policy that were important to the Conservative Party, and you said climate denial, bashing treaty negotiations, and legalising the right to hit your kids. Are you serious that those are important issues, because they sound like redneck dog whistles to me? Are you serious that climate denial is bigger than 6.2% unemployment?
Those issues are the ones that I got asked questions about. It's a different question as to what are the most important things that we need to do, and unemployment's right up that list, because as you know, one of our policies is to make sure everyone's in a job. So we don't, what's most interesting for the media is not necessarily what's most important to get done first.
Are those benchmark issues that you would say no to National over?
No, they're not actually. They're just issues that I think we have a lot of support from our constituents on. Look, when you say climate deniers, I don't deny for a moment that climate changes. The question is whether or not the man's impact on that, and whether it's worth having a huge Ponzi tax scheme designed by bankers for it, or whether we'd be better at cleaning up our rivers.
Legalising hitting your kids, is that more important than 270,000 kids in poverty?
I think they're both important issues. The public of New Zealand do want something done about parents and the way they discipline their children. The current...
Who wants that?
Basically 80-something% of all New Zealanders. Current polling this year, they're not happy with a law that doesn't work. And it is a dog's breakfast.
How many people have been prosecuted by for hitting their kids?
As I understand, it's 14 that are actually light smacks as opposed to genuine convictions.
So 14
convictions.
Is that a massive problem?
It is when you look at the number that have been reported and investigated. When you get into the hundreds, it is.
So if
and New Zealanders think it is.
If John Key was to say to you, look, we're not going to move on the smacking business, is that a no-go for you?
No, we've never made it a bottom line.
So it's not. So you put that to one side.
No, that's right. But it's an issue that New Zealanders want changed. So why not go in there and represent New Zealanders on it?
Matthew, how does a liberal feminist hero like you sleep at night in your bedroom with the portrait of John Key on the wall when your socially liberal party has to cut a deal with the far religious right to stay in power?
I don't think any of those social issues are going to come into the coalition talks, because National can always deal with Labor, and there is an overwhelming 80-90% in Parliament against smacking and in favour of the deal that Helen Clark and John Key and Sue Bradford put together. Gay marriage, Labor, National, the Greens basically all feel the same way about that. So on those sort of social issues, even if the Conservative Party forms a coalition with National, those issues will be carved out, and the Labor National majority in Parliament will prevail on them. What worries me more about the Conservative Party is the way in which it would shift National on economic policy even further to the left. The Conservative Party has, in my view, far left economic policies in a number of areas. They are against, for example, privatisation of state assets. The Conservative Party has expressed concerns about foreign investment in New Zealand. The Conservative Party has a policy of confiscating land off people, property owners, who don't use it properly within
Sounds
5
righteous.
years.
Sounds righteous.
So,
Sounds righteous.
so when it comes to economic policy, there are synergies between the Green Party and the Conservative Party, and so I think that those will be the areas.
That's a rough comparison.
In fact, I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not
let's get real.
sure. I'm not sure that the Green Party would have a policy as Leninist as saying the state will confiscate land that it doesn't think is being used properly. So if there is a Labour national, if there is a Conservative national coalition, I think it will sit in a policy sense slightly to the left of the current government.
That's remarkable. Colin, let's have a chat about your answer on global warming, because it has received a lot of information online. While sunspots and planet circulations are indeed factors in the heating of the planet, and I'm assuming you're referring to the Milankovitch cycle, which impacts the Earth once every 100,000 years because of the axis of the planet and its tilt to the sun. You will, of course, then be aware that in our current Milankovitch cycle, we're supposed to be cooling for another 20,000 years, and we aren't. Something outside sunspots and planet circulations are causing the planet's temperature to rise dramatically since the industrial age, the same time we invented the combustion engine.
Well, we are cooling at the moment.
Should voters be concerned that an anti-science politician wants to be in the next government?
Look, it's not anti-science. I think the scientific evidence is very clear. In terms of contribution to man-made carbon, which is a very small contribution of overall carbon in the atmosphere, New Zealand is infinitesimally small. Less than 0.5%.
So we've got nothing to lose by leading them.
I think we have everything to lose when we make our producers less competitive compared to our three main trading partners, and that's what we've done. Our farmers are the most carbon efficient in the world.
Well,
how does it make sense? How does it make sense to penalise them? How does it make sense to penalise them?
Dairy came out this week and said, Dairy New Zealand came out this week and said that they are 10 years behind sustainable farming, the practices that you see in Europe. We're a decade behind. That's their own words.
It's not sustainability we're talking about here, it's the carbon footprint, right? And we do that very, very well, and we take our efficient farmers and we say, hey, we're going to load you with an extra tax. And if we're talking about loading New Zealanders up with tax, think about those families who are struggling to get by, who now have to pay more for power, more for gas. And what are they actually achieving in paying this? They're not producing any less carbon. Why don't we just scrap the whole thing and say clean up the waterways, because that's something real that all New Zealanders would benefit from.
So do you believe that man-made pollution is causing the planet to superheat?
Let's talk about pollution separately. Pollution is a real issue. Clean up our backyard, absolutely, got full support for that.
Are we causing the planet to heat?
We are not the primary cause.
Matthew, if Key is seriously looking to the hard religious right for power, where does he get off trying to spook the electorate with the Greens? Come on.
Well, I think that the Conservative Party and the Greens, as I've said, they have very similar approaches to some important issues like privatisation, land ownership, foreign investment. But the Conservative Party, I don't think, wants to do willful harm to the people of New Zealand in the way that the Green Party does in order to please their foreign paymasters at Greenpeace in Amsterdam. The Green Party is way out on the extreme on issues that they would, I think, be taken seriously by Labour, whereas the areas where Colin is way out on the extreme, like smacking and gay marriage, he's not going to be taken seriously by John Key anyway. So I'm not as concerned, on balance, by the Conservative Party as by the Green Party.
Both of you.
I mean, you're talking about climate change just then.
And we'll get into that a little bit later.
New Zealand is by far the world's leader in that policy area. There is no other country that has a all sectors, all gases ETS.
Dairy New Zealand's comments this week
that they need to catch it. That in some areas, that was more about pollution and so forth. New Zealand has led the world with the Global Agricultural Alliance. I don't know quite what it is that people are saying New Zealand should do, because we've implemented
over half our rivers are polluted.
Well, that's not a climate change issue.
That's right.
I mean,
that's not
when you're talking
change.
about climate change, I'm not.
There is no methane from the cows.
There is no. But we are solving that problem. We've led the world with Massey University and the Global Research Alliance that now 30 countries are involved in. We're absolutely leading the world on the methane issue. We have the world's only all sectors, all gases ETS. The fact that the price of carbon is now, less than $1 per tonne, well, it's, that's not our fault.
Question to both of you on this. Final question. Will the 2014 election be decided by the centre or the opposite ends of the political spectrum? It's between Mana and Conservative Party, isn't it?
Well, the Mana Party, of course, is polling below the Labour Party and Te Tokerau at the moment.
Last result, of course, they had enough for two MPs.
Elections are solved in the centre.
In the centre, do you think it's going to be Conservative Party or Mana who are going to be?
Look, I think the majority of votes cast are in the centre. But let's face it, to be government, you've got to pick up somewhere those who are smaller parties and represent a smaller and maybe a more unique constituency.
Are you going to be a kingmaker?
Look, it's a year away, and that's a long time in the life of our party, which has only been going a couple of years. I think there's the opportunity. Yeah, polling-wise, right now we could be. That's it.
But you're not going to be the kingmaker, and nor is the Mana Party, because in the end, David Cunliffe won't deal with you. I don't know why not.
I don't know why not either.
Because as I say, your economic policies are very left-wing.
Yes. Thank you, panel. Moving on with issue 2. The fallout at Radio Live has seen Willie and JT step down for the rest of the year and apologise, alongside fellow Talkback hosts Andrew Fagan and Sean Plunkett for offending listeners when discussing rape culture. The level of ignorance and seeming inability to comprehend how insensitive the constant repetition of victim-blaming mythology was generating on social media led to a mismanagement that saw advertisers boycotting the station en masse. Matthew, how did Radio Live get this so wrong for so long?
Well, I don't think management there is all over the content. I don't think that the people at MediaWorks who own Radio Live listen to Radio Live. So I don't think that people in in management positions sort of knew quite what was going on.
Why not?
Well, because they were just coming out of receivership. They've been in receivership, and I think they just sort of see Radio Live as where a few crazy things happen from time to time, and they hope the ratings will go up, and they don't micromanage the content at all.
So when the feedback after the comments were made, you don't think that management sat up and listened then?
Not immediately, no.
So it wasn't until you literally walked out or were thrown out, stormed out of that then they started taking it seriously?
I think that I'm sure was irrelevant to it. I think the advertisers was important. When the advertisers started ringing and saying this is not a show we want to be associated with, they would have started to think. But far too slow. The hosts concerned, I don't think, saw that what they had said was particularly outrageous. I think that the two hosts sort of thought that out in West Auckland, boys do rape girls and we should just accept that, is how the sort of hosts seemed to, that was their attitude.
Colin, you suggested in May 2012 that New Zealand had the most promiscuous young women in the world and that the taxpayers shouldn't be picking up the tab for their contraception. Do you think there is a misogyny problem in New Zealand?
Well, first of all, I didn't express that opinion. I quoted university research.
Well, it was a condom manufacturer.
No. It's a Berkeley University out of the US, and it's 100 cooperating scientists and psychologists. So that I believe it's always valid to quote relevant research.
But it was a condom manufacturer's research,
wasn't it? No, it wasn't. And no one's ever shown me that, and I'd be very happy if someone did. Okay. No, it was a university research, and it basically said that our young men and our young women in this country do have a few problems
and
around
why the taxpayers shouldn't be picking up the tab.
And look, if we're going to spend 520 million more on welfare, which is what we were doing,
and not all that money's going on contraception.
No, it's not. But some of it is, and it's relevant. No, it's picking up the pieces. It's the young, teen pregnancy. It's the whole thing.
Could I just interrupt from a treasury perspective? I would have thought if you're a country where your young people are the most promiscuous in the world, that would be an argument for paying for contraception rather than an argument against.
It could be.
The Conservative Party and I don't see eye to eye on
But it's about who's picking up the tab for these things. Now, in that same interview, I said that I thought that young men were equally, if not more, responsible. And Look, that wasn't a discussion about misogyny. That was a discussion
it
about
sort of suggests,
responsibility.
but it suggests a mentality, doesn't it?
Look, it does. Why is it that we've got so many, children growing up without a dad when the dads have just split, headed for the hills, headed for Australia because they don't want to pick up any responsibility? Do we have a problem with it? I suggest that we certainly have some people with that problem. I think you can see it. I think the discussions that we saw were out of order. I think a lot of people cringed and said, people really think that way in New Zealand? Because some do. So I think we have to be real.
Well, I think you're right. I think there are people that do, and Willie and JT were expressing a view.
But doesn't the reaction actually give us some glimmer of hope that in fact that's not the majority? And the advertisers could see that, and the listeners could see that, Matthew could see that.
But I
think
think
we're probably in safe ground.
I think a staunch line against a young woman being promiscuous would be a smart political line for the Conservative Party. I would have thought that would be popular.
Well,
for you to criticise young women for being promiscuous, I would have thought would win you some votes.
But no, at the end, well, it might do. But at the end of the day, we have to face the fact that surely this is people's personal choices. But it's not your personal choice if it's older men tanking you up with alcohol. And I think that's the point that was missed here.
I mean, I'm not sure what the Conservative Party's view on teen sex is, homosexuality or abortion. All those sorts of issues, but you don't always support the choice position, do you?
Generally speaking, we do. Now,
when support choice on abortion?
Yeah, when it comes to abortion, we actually would like to see fully informed consent, as they have in Europe, so that women know what the full consequences are, and we think that advice should be independent. Now, that's our view, that's our policy. Now, I know that some of our members would have a different view. I think it's informed choice, and we don't have that currently.
And would informed choice be that the woman has to see ultrasounds of the baby?
I told you they're not really right wing.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Matthew,
but I think they do have to know the long-term consequences health-wise, and it's only fair and right that they should.
So that would revolve around the negatives of abortion. Being informed of that.
Maybe there are negatives they're not told right now. Europe have got it right on this.
Matthew, with an estimated 1% conviction rate, we are looking at unsolved historical rapes in the tens of thousands. Has the legal system utterly failed the victims of rape?
Well, I think it has, but I don't have any solution to that. I was talking to some prominent criminal trial lawyers this week who, on both the prosecution and the defence side, who have made the point to me that if it was their daughter who was 13 in the situation of the roast busters, they think it would be better for her not to go to the police because the trauma of the trial is so great. Now, I don't know how you give someone charged with rape a fair trial without allowing their defence lawyer to prosecute the woman that complains or the girl that complains. So I don't have a solution to this, but I do assume that it is there are many young women and old women who don't make complaints.
But that's a travesty of justice, isn't it? I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of rapes.
Yeah, and as I say, I don't know how you would resolve it.
Colin, part of it surely, when you said earlier on, it does come back to the way people are raised in home. And if they're taught the right values, and I think that's really important here, if you've got parents who discipline you, tell you, no, that's not how you behave, it does give you the right direction on these things, as opposed to the unruly, delinquent young men who cause mayhem.
Well, no, hold on. What has New Zealand learnt, Colin, you think? What has New Zealand learnt from this roastbuster issue? What have we learnt?
What I would hope we have learned, because I'm not going to think that we necessarily learned it. I think what we've learned, it's just that glimpse into a world that some people pretend isn't there, which is that there's trouble. There is trouble amongst our young people. There are young men who are out there who are delinquent, uncontrolled, carrying out behaviour that most of us would rather not know was there, and often we sort of cover up our eyes and go, see no evil. But I do think there's an issue. And we need to be real about it.
Final question very quickly. Should Radio Live make a donation to Rape Crisis? You've been quite vocal on this.
About Radio Live giving a...
Yes, make a
I'm
donation.
not sure that Radio Live could afford to give a donation.
I was going
to
to
any
say, it's
charity.
a good idea. It's a good idea they have the
probably
cash.
good, but I don't
Good
think
idea they have
could
the
afford
cash.
that, yeah.
Thank you, panel. Moving on with issue 3 quickly now. Russell Norman was booed in Parliament this week when he tried to connect the worst storm to hit the Philippines, global warming, while senior government MPs like Jerry Brownlee and Bill English, alongside National Party nobodies like Jamie Lee Ross, were revealed as full-blown climate deniers. Matthew, the text from the Philippines climate change negotiator, who Russell quoted extensively in his speech, read, "I salute you. My deepest appreciation for your heartwarming gesture. I wish you the best." With the exception of Tim Grosser, National, they're a party of climate deniers. They can cut a deal with Conservative Party, can't they?
Oh, I thought Russell Norman was completely out of line in the context of which he gave that speech. David Cunliffe, I thought, gave an excellent speech where he just pledged that the opposition stood side by side with the government on offering aid to the Philippines. Whether Russell Norman accepts this or not, there are people who don't have the same belief in imminent catastrophic climate change that he does.
The Philippines aren't one of them.
Well, and of course,
One individual in the Philippines.
if Russell Norman had, and I'm sure he hasn't because I think he's a grandstander, if he had in fact read the entire report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, he would know that, of course, they're now saying they don't think that tropical storms like this are necessarily increasing as a result of climate change. It was disgusting what he did.
Colin, would you, if you had been in Parliament, let's say that everything goes well for you in 2014, that speech was given, would you have been booing?
Actually, I wouldn't have booed because I think we need to raise the level of respect actually in the chamber. But I do agree it was probably out of order. I think he's just wrong. That's the biggest problem here. The IPCC, as Matthew's already pointed out, have said there's no link. And I think to draw the link, he could have done better with his time.
There's a general, there's general debate, and there actually was a general debate that very day. If he wanted to give a half-hour speech about climate change, he could have. But when Parliament expresses its view in something like this, the convention is that New Zealand stands together across the political. I mean, actually, this is a tragedy of unprecedented. Well, not unprecedented because we had the tsunami, but it's a very large tragedy, and New Zealand as a parliament should have spoken as one, not giving political speeches.
At what point would you need to see the science? I think they're saying, they're 95% sure that man-made pollution is causing the planet to heat. At what level do you need to see the science before you'd accept there's a connection, or do you accept there's a connection?
Well, there'll be a connection. I mean, I think the only debate is the extent of it, and the way to which other factors are more powerful, one way or the other. And so when the world hasn't warmed for 16 or 17 years, despite the models saying it would, when the seas have not risen to the extent that the IPCC was saying, when you go back to the Rio summit in 1990, according to a lot of people at that, the world would be over by now. So the models clearly are wrong in the extent to which they predict disaster. And I think the only question is there imminent catastrophic climate change? Is there anything New Zealand can do about it other than leading the world as we are now with the Research Alliance?
At what level would you feel comfortable saying, yes, the science is right, man-made pollution is causing the planet to heat?
Yeah.
Is that 95% right now? Where would you be?
No, look,
98?
I think we're a long way. I have to say I pretty much agree exactly there with what Matthew was saying.
That's of no surprise to me.
Yeah, well, on this one, here's what I think. I think that we're getting distracted. You see, the pollution issue, the toxins in our environment, the rivers that need cleaning up should be our major focus in my view. This whole let's set up a big taxation system and set up a trading scheme for carbon, to me misses the real point. It's about having a clean backyard and a safe backyard, clean rivers, clean land.
Final question here. Who will be ultimately proven right on climate change? The majority is scientists who say it's man-made, or the tiny fraction claiming it isn't?
Well, no one ever gets proven right in that black and white way you're referring to in science. But put it this way, I don't think that in 2100 there will be vast parts of the world that are flooded.
That's your position?
Yeah, I think, who knows? But in fact, you don't need to That's actually what the IPCC says. The forecasts, even by the IPCC for temperature change and also particularly for sea rise, are far less frightening than what the lunatics in the Green Party will claim.
Who's ultimately going to be proven right? The majority of scientists or the minority?
I think the majority will end up in a position that says that there are a lot of things that cause climate change. There'll be ongoing discussion, in my view, as to what level we contribute. But I hope what comes out of it is that we all look to clean up our backyard, have clean rivers, get rid of the toxins from the environment, because that's good for everybody.
Thank you, panel. We need to wrap the show with a final word. Colin, let's have your final word.
Oh, well, it's good to go first, isn't it, eh? Look, I think thinking ahead to next year, potential government things, we're a long way away. And interesting to see lots of speculation about coalition and what might end up. But I think the reality is, a week's a long time in politics. How long is a year? And I think watch this space, because I think it's going to get more interesting. And obviously for us as a party, continue to grow. And we look forward to being part of the next government.
Feminist hero Matthew Hooton, your final word?
Well, I've kind of enjoyed the feminist hero thing for the last week. You know, it's amazing what happens when you go on radio and say rape is the responsibility of the rapist. So for my next trick, I just want to declare here on Citizen A that murder is always the responsibility of the murderer, and that burglary is always the responsibility of the burglar. And I just hope I get even more Facebook likes, and if that works, then I'm going to go with the sky is blue the following week.
You might become a Conservative Party MP.
Wow.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Matthew. Ladies and gentlemen, to my final word. It has been announced that this is to be the final month of Citizen A. The Ministry of Culture and Heritage has purposely not implemented their own policy to ensure free-to-air signals are available for not-for-profit television, and green-lighted Cordia, another government department, to flog off the remaining free-to-air frequencies for business interests. While Face TV will continue on the Sky platform, 140 hours of New Zealand public broadcasting, including Citizen A, will end this month. It has been an honour to host the show, and I would like to thank everyone who has participated in Citizen A over the last 2 years, and to the loyal viewers who have been so passionate about it. It is in the interest of the powerful to limit debate on television. It has been a privilege to fight that interest. The final Citizen A will screen 28th of November. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook and connect with other like-minded news citizens, and follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook page. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.